Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another review here for The Walking Dead Dead City. So in this one here, I obviously want to talk about episode 4, which was another very solid episode here in Dead City. And we got some pretty big reveals in this episode. We actually have a major character that did return here. And I really enjoyed that scene. There's some stuff here that I want to talk about with the story. One issue that I did find in the episode, although I will say I don't know if it's going to necessarily be an issue in the future. It's possible that it's sort of a foreshadowing of something that's going to happen, but it was just kind of noticeable. I don't know. But before we go any further, obviously, please be aware this video will contain spoilers for The Walking Dead Dead City episode 4. And also, if you are new here, make sure to be a subscriber if you do want to get all my Walking Dead content like this. Comic-Con is in like 2 weeks from now, right? 2 weeks or 3 weeks, like 2.5 weeks or something like that from now. So there's going to be quite a bit of stuff here, like the videos are picking up now. After this video, actually, I do have my episode 5 trailer breakdown that I will be posting, as well as I do want to talk about the Rick Grimes and Michonne Grimes show and get into some stuff there as well with that. But Comic-Con is very, very soon. There's going to be a lot of stuff happening. Like this month is going to be a very, very big month here. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about. So definitely make sure to be a subscriber if you do want to get all my Walking Dead content like this. Now with this episode, it's kind of funny because it starts off with Negan. Like I wasn't even really analyzing this shot, to be honest. I was just sort of looking at it like, well, I see Negan sitting down. I didn't even realize Lucille was there, but I just kind of like, I was thinking like, oh, this really looks a lot like the Sanctuary. This is kind of a cool shot. Like they shot it. So I was thinking like, this is Negan just sitting around the table in like, you know, the I don't know, whatever place they're staying in there in Manhattan. And I was just like, well, this is probably just that or something like that. But then all of a sudden I was like, no, actually, I think this is the Sanctuary. This really looks like the Sanctuary. And I was like, that has to be, wait, Negan looks a lot younger. And then all of a sudden Simon shows up out of nowhere. And at first when he was walking up to the table, I was like, yeah, this is Simon. But I just kept thinking like, is this season 7, season 8? No, obviously this is Dead City. Like I at first thought I put on like the wrong episode. Like it was just all these like really quick feelings I was feeling, and then no, I guess we just kind of saw Simon there, and I was like, I guess yeah, this is literally, man, this is so cool. Like these flashbacks, the use of the flashbacks in this show, I think to me are something that is just so amazing. Honestly, they've handled it so well. I've never been excited for flashback scenes. Usually when we get a flashback scene, you know, on The Walking Dead, most of the time I was like, okay, this is going to be kind of, you know, this might be a boring scene basically, right? Like we might be sitting here just kind of like, well, I guess we'll have to wait and see what this means or whatever, right? But it actually really worked so well. Like all the flashback scenes in this show so far worked so well. Having Simon come back to the show obviously was just such an amazing thing, and he felt like Simon, you know, him being there, it was just like, yeah, this is Simon. I mean, obviously the character, like, he looks different. It's the same thing with Negan, like, trying to get Jeffrey Dean Morgan play the younger version of himself. It's like, I mean, I don't know what it is about it. Like, it's not like he's aged a lot in, like, what, 6, 7, 8 years or whatever. Like, he basically looks the same, but there's just something about when you're trying to redo a look for that character from that time period, you just can't get it, you know, the exact same. And also on top of it too, if you think about it, the show is just shot so differently because it's a high budget, right? So if anything, it's kind of cool to see this, because this is like, imagine The Walking Dead actually looking like this, right? Like this is what The Walking Dead would look like with a really big budget. And yeah, I mean, to me, I thought that this was just, well, definitely a highlight of the episode for sure. This was a huge highlight of the episode. There was 2 moments in this episode that I really, really liked. Before we actually do get into some of that though, I want to talk about some of the issues that I have with this episode. And it's not really necessarily issues. It's just that there were certain moments that I felt could have been bigger. I think that's why in the future, I would really like them to go up to 8 episodes, even 10 episodes for these shows, because it is kind of, you know, we've watched 4 episodes now. There's 2 more left. The trailer for episode 5 looks really good. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff in that episode. I really think that one could be the best one of the season. I don't know about episode 6, but based off of what we're getting in episode 5, it almost looks like the world is about to get so much bigger out of nowhere, because there's this new character, and it looks like the Croat almost listens to her, and she's like the real boss. And I'm wondering if she owns a lot of different places around here. Like, yeah, I do have a lot of questions there, but obviously that's something that we'll talk about once we watch episode 5, and then obviously episode 6 as well. But the big arena battle here obviously ended up not really necessarily being a big arena battle. You know, it's portrayed as such. Like there was some stuff that seemed like it was really big. The explosions outside the arena, that was really cool. The timer and everything, like I liked a lot of that. The music playing, there was parts of it there where I was like, this is definitely really, really good. But it was just the actual fighting inside the arena around that like wrestling ring or whatever, that it just kind of felt like it was, I don't know what it was. It just felt very like, we've seen this so many times before. They've killed so many walkers before. Seeing something like this, it just wasn't that exciting. You know, there wasn't a lot really necessarily going on. And again, I'm not saying that this is like the big battle of the season or something like that. Like I don't want to be portraying it like that, but because of the explosion that went off and stuff outside and the walkers coming in, I was like, this has to be a much bigger moment. And I think also what threw me off was the fact that that one character, I don't know what his name is, but he's obviously a main character here with that group that Maggie and Negan met. But it looked like he got bit in this episode. Like, I swear to God, he should have gotten bit, but he seemed fine later on. Now, obviously, they don't really address it like, have you been bitten? There's no question of that afterwards. So that could be a reveal in episode 5 or 6. I'm predicting that's probably going to be a reveal, at least I hope so, because there's no way that after dealing with all of that, with those walkers literally on him and pulling at him, there's no way that he never got bitten. And if he didn't, that's kind of unbelievable. And that's what I mean. When I watched the scene, I was fully in it and I was like believing everything and things kind of made sense. I was still feeling a little off with the walker fight because I was like, well, this should be a lot more bigger than what it is. It still feels very small scale. But as soon as that happened and it didn't look like he got bit at all, I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. I knew that he was going to show up later on, and then he did. And I was like, well, they're probably not going to address it. Or maybe he did get bit and they'll address it right away, but they never did. So I'm just assuming now that he's probably bit. I think it makes sense. I don't know if him and that other woman are a couple. I'm not entirely sure, but it kind of looked like it. So I wonder if that was foreshadowing of that. Like if that does eventually happen, then like I understand it. But again, my issues here with this episode are just sort of, it really is just like this scene specifically. I like the stuff with the Croat and I like the stuff with the Marshall and with Negan. You know, a lot of that I did like obviously it is going to feel a lot more small scale. This episode really just focuses on being inside that building. Episode 5 looks like a breath of fresh air. I mean, literally, like you see a lot of shots in that episode and there's some really amazing stuff. And even in this episode, there was still a lot of really breathtaking shots. It's just this battle here, it just really felt like in my head when we first saw this scene, like there was so much more happening here. I thought that this was more on a rooftop. I don't know why I thought it was an arena, but even regardless of that, I thought there would be like this battle with like the Croats people basically being in the stands, right? Like there was like 300 people here basically watching them fight all these walkers and whatever, which obviously changes the context of the story. It changes a lot of stuff. But again, that's probably mixed with a lot of expectations I had going into the episode and just certain things that I thought would be happening. And so, yeah, it just felt a little small. It didn't feel like this really epic battle. And just because of the explosions happening like just around the arena or whatever, it just kind of seemed like a moment that could have been a lot bigger, but it wasn't. If you watch the trailer for episode 5, it looks like Maggie's going to be fighting that really crazy mutated walker. So I'm excited for that. I really hope that moment's not disappointing. I hope that it's a really awesome, epic, like 10-minute battle, honestly, because that's the one moment that really will define this series. I feel like there's got to be some really cool action stuff here. Episode 6, you could still give us some of that, but like I don't know, there's a big part of me that kind of feels like episode 5 is going to be that. There's going to be a lot of stuff that happens there. Then in episode 6 is where we'll sort of deal with everything else. But anyways, a lot of what happens in this episode, you know, Negan does tell the story, or he mentions anyways, that like getting closer and closer to the Croat reminds him of that familiar feeling. And I totally relate with that. And I really like the fact that the writers actually put that in there. Cause like for Negan, like, you know, that part of his life is something that he just doesn't want to go back to. And being around certain people again, it just gives you those similar vibes. And you're just like, I don't like it here. This was the past. I've moved on from this. I have a different outlook on life. I'm a different person now. And I personally relate with that. You know, I've went through some stuff recently and I look back at certain moments and there's certain things that do happen where I'm just like, you know what, I'm just a different person now and I don't put up with that kind of stuff anymore. So I just want to I want to stay away from that. I don't want to be in these certain locations around these certain people. You know, I think most people can relate with that. It's just once you've grown up quite a bit and you've just done a lot of maturing, you're just like, yeah, you know what, I don't want to be around these situations, right? And that's sort of how he feels in this episode. It's just like, you know, I don't like this feeling, and just being around these people again is just like, man, it's really bringing me back to a time that I really do not like. And this episode really was like the other, you know, the one moment I would say that was really, really big obviously was Simon's return and all of that. But I would say Negan and the Croat, I think, were probably the best part of this episode. Just you know, the whistling and whatnot. I really like the fact that is a thing in this show. It fits it so well. Ginny actually makes a return. She does show up in this episode, and now she is with Maggie. I mean, I guess it makes sense. Like, in terms of what's happening now with Maggie and Negan, they're both separated, and they're both like very much separated. Like, Maggie is going into the sewers, so I don't think she's going to be with Negan, honestly, probably until episode 6. Negan right now is obviously he was captured by the Marshal, and that whole thing there honestly is frustrating, but I understand it from the Marshal's point of view. But it just makes me, as a fan of these characters, just not like the Marshal. Because like, I was liking him, like I was actually liking him. Like, he was kind of a complex character because he wants Negan dead, and obviously I'm a huge fan of Negan, but it was just like, well, you know, I understand people's points of view. People have different points of view on things. It's totally fine. So, you know, let's see what the Marshal has to offer. And I've really liked the character. And even in this episode, I really liked him. You know, like, Negan actually helps him out. The Croat throws him over this like catwalk thing or whatever. And it looks like he's going to die, but obviously Negan does help him out. And throughout all of that, he still wants to arrest him. Like, once they get to that little shop or whatever, the Marshal just like pulls out that gun or whatever and then wants to arrest Negan. And I'm just like, I just can't even believe it. Like, I get it, obviously, you know, for and that's the thing too. Like, this is one of those things that I'm complaining about it, but not because like the story is bad or anything like that. It makes sense. I'm just more frustrated that it's happening, but it makes sense with the character. Like, he has such strong beliefs in what he does. He went all the way to New York to capture him. Just because Negan does save his life, it's not going to change it that fast. It won't, right? And that's the thing too. We'll have to wait and see where episode 5 goes. This could have been more of a thing to end the episode. I still think there's a lot more complexity here. I don't think the Marshal is like the straightforward villain of like, I don't care what happens. I want to arrest you, take you in here, and then we'll kill you then, right? Like, I don't think he's like that. I think there's a lot more layers there to him. I think that he's doing this right now just because that's what he came here to do. But I do think, you know, once they're trying to escape and they're trying to get through this and that, I think he's going to change a little bit, or at least I'm hoping so, because it would be kind of cool if he joined our characters, like Maggie and Negan, and became like, just, I don't know, just like one of the group, right? But we'll see, you know, like, that's the more predictable plot. Like, he might just be an outright villain. I'm not too sure. The Croat actually mentions Alexandria, talks about the hilltop and whatnot, and I was confused at first, but no, he was explaining because he heard the story from somebody, I guess a former savior, I believe the name was Jerome, who I guess just left and then just like obviously told him about what happened and all that. And the Croat kind of mentions like, I wish I was there, I could have helped out. I mean, could you imagine like the Croat actually being there during the All Out War arc? Like, that would just be so cool. But like, obviously that was never going to happen. But like, yeah, I just think that, you know, like the what ifs there, you know, the world building here, I really do like it. Like, it does feel like he was actually there, especially getting a scene like that with him and Simon. It would have been so cool if Dwight was there. And like, that's one of those things too, you know, when I look at Dead City overall, they're doing such a great job with a lot of things here in terms of world building. I think for season 2 or season 3, bringing Dwight and Sherry onto that show, like, just imagine if they actually showed up here in New York City. Like, just the stories here, just everything that would happen. You know, I'm so wanting it. I really want that stuff to happen. But yeah, you know, overall, episode 4, in terms of where I would rank it, in terms of like my favorite episodes so far this series, episode 3, I would say, is still my favorite. Like, episode 3 was just one of those episodes that really, I don't know, like, it was just a really great episode. I did enjoy the overall story there. The music at the ending, like, just everything there, it felt like classic Walking Dead. It's still definitely my favorite one. Episode 2, I also really liked. I would say I preferred episode 4 over episode 1. So I guess my overall ranking would have to be like, my favorite one is 3, then 2, then 4, then 1. I mean, I still really enjoyed episode 1. I'm putting that at the bottom just because, I don't know, I mean, I feel like there's just been more exciting moments since then, but like, yeah, like, that's probably where I'd put episode 4. You know, I have some issues with this episode, but it still hasn't like hurt the series or anything crazy like that. Like, I'm still really excited for next week's episode, which I will do a video on. That video definitely will be coming out later on today. So yeah, post all your thoughts down below. Hope you guys all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.